people don't post on their Instagram feed, when they're stuck in the office at 2 o'clock in the morning stuffing press packs, but they certainly put their photos up when they're at the Monaco Grand Prix, having a beer and watching the Formula One. So it looks like it's this amazing, super glamorous job that you just hang out with footballers and fly around on private jets, and hang out in hospitality. And there is a little bit of that, and that's why people are excited about it.
This much.
Tiny bit, yeah. And there's a lot of hard work that.
Everyone, and welcome back to the Sporting Level Podcast. And today I'm here with Dan Parr. And Dan, first of all, thanks for taking the time. How's everything going?
It's all good. Thanks for having me, Ole. It's a pleasure to be here. UK is a little bit cooler than Portugal at the moment, but we're looking forward to the summer.
Right. I mean, I think we're all looking forward to summer, but I must admit it's not all of the days here in Portugal that is equally nice. Being a Norwegian used to winter, but it's all good. But thanks for taking the time, and it's a pleasure having you here, obviously, and excited to share a little bit about your story, your journey in the industry, a little bit what you guys are working on at InSport Education, and of course, some tips and advice that you have. But before we, get all the way there, why don't you share a little bit about like how your journey in the sport industry began? Take us a little bit through how it all started.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I suppose like a lot of people who work in the industry, I've always enjoyed participating and playing sport, and that was always an important part of my childhood and school days. And when I went to university, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I studied zoology as a degree because I had a passion for the natural world and animals, which I still have, but I didn't really have a clear vision of what I wanted to do.
Right.
But I then sort of thought the idea of working in sport would be pretty cool. This was sort of late 90s. So the sports industry was growing pretty quickly, becoming more commercial. And I was very fortunate. I was able, through some contacts, to get a bit of work experience with a small sports marketing agency that was based in the UK. I was at a university up in Edinburgh in Scotland, and they did quite a lot of work around rugby. So I would help these guys out when Scotland were playing rugby matches at Murrayfield, and I would get a few friends from university and we'd go and help, hand out sort of free kit and stuff at the matches. Yeah. And then in the summer holidays, I'd go to their office and I'd do a bit of work experience, which, was pretty menial stuff. Right. But it meant I was involved in the business and starting to build a bit of understanding of what the industry was actually like. And then when I finished university, it was in 1999, and the Rugby World Cup was taking place in the UK, actually in Wales, in 99. And I'd managed to get a role working for the media accreditation service in Cardiff at the Rugby World Cup, which was pretty cool. I'm a big rugby fan, and so we were staying in an apartment in central Cardiff, and all the rugby was going on around us, and we were sort of getting to meet a lot of the players and the sort of officials and the media and stuff. And then I actually bumped into one of the guys that I'd worked with previously doing the work experience, and it was an amazing sort of coming together of good luck and fortune. They were looking to open an office in Edinburgh. I had lived in Edinburgh. I knew my rugby. I had a relationship with that organisation. So very quickly, that it was a chance for me to join that sort of new fledgling business in Edinburgh. So, I was very fortunate, right? I mean, it's a tough industry to break into, as we all know, and it's got harder to get into as it's become more popular and as it's become bigger and it's become more global. But I believe you make a bit of your own luck, but you've also got to just hope that you do get a bit of good fortune. And for me, it was meeting the right people at the right time and the right opportunity, and I was prepared to move and join the business. And And that's how I got going. So in 1999, 2000, I started working as a junior account executive for a business up in Scotland, and then that sort of led on to other things over the years.
Yeah. No, I mean, like it's a really important point, and I think as well what you were talking upon, it is a challenging industry, and I mean, like you gotta build your own luck a little bit. But I think it's just it's a factor of if you don't put yourself out there, if you don't kind of like open up those doors and are willing to go into those doors, it is part of the process, right? So it's kind of like just building your own luck in a sense. True.
Yeah, I think it's a sort of underrated and underutilized aspect, really. And people, it's competitive. There's people out there that are always trying to, you've got to use whatever you have to your advantage, right?
Yeah,
you are not going to get a phone call out of the blue, somebody offering you an amazing job in sport. It's just not going to happen.
No, that's the least thing that's going to happen.
Yeah, so you have to use connectivity and networks, and here we are in 2022. We've got brilliant platforms like Sporting, and we have LinkedIn and social media, and you can connect with people pretty easily. In 1999 there was no Facebook. There was no social media. Yeah. You had to write letters and put it in the post,
right,
and phone people, and it was pretty old-fashioned. But even now, some people are good at it, but it does still surprise me. I've met groups of students, and we've done a lot through InSport with different groups of people and individuals that are keen to get into the industry.
Yeah.
Some young men and women are brilliant. They're straight onto LinkedIn. They're getting in touch. They're asking questions.
Right.
And most people, I think, in the industry of sport will help if they can. And we've been able to connect a few people up with some opportunities. We've been able to provide a little bit of mentoring, provide a bit of advice. A couple of guys, one young man, approached me the other day that we'd done some work with. He was applying for a job with one of the big agencies. I know a couple of people at that agency, so I could put in a good word for him, and that helped a little bit. And that's
right.
Easy for me to do. He's a good guy. I want to help.
Yeah.
We're happy. People are happy to do that. But it still surprises me how many people don't do it. I've met lots and lots of people who have not approached me, haven't even connected on LinkedIn. I think that it's an opportunity missed, right? And whether that's they're embarrassed, or whether they're just unsure, or whether they've forgotten, or what. But I think it's really important that you have to, every single person, if you're trying to get a start in the business of sport, every person you meet who might be helpful, you need to connect with them, and you need to try and build some sort of relationship. Some people won't respond and they won't be helpful. Some people will be amazing.
Right.
And it might be that one person that opens the door for you, that gives you an opportunity, that makes an introduction, that sends you a job description. So you've just got to try every single opportunity and an angle that you possibly can.
Yeah, and I'm glad you actually touched upon this in a sense too, because I think it's a very critical part. And I always try to talk about this when I speak for young students and professionals too. It's like, if you don't go out there and put yourself out there, nothing is going to happen. And the easiest way to start is go utilize again, like we were having presentations for our university partners with some leading organizations, and I told them, like, you literally had like an hour sharing for some of the best people in the industry. Like, utilize it, like take advantage of it to start building, because, and I think it's a little bit lack of knowledge, of course, a little bit lack of like the steps that you have to take. And then there's always going to be those that are extremely eager and just wants to do everything they can to go in, and so it's just the more I think we can educate people in a sense to like learn the steps and help them, I think the better it is. And with that, I think it's a perfect way to kind of like segue into like obviously what you guys are doing today, because obviously you're working at InSport Education. So tell me a little bit more about what this company is all about, what it offers, what you guys are doing.
Sure. Yeah. So I spent 20 years in sports marketing, and then I moved to work for InSport Education. And InSport is like a business school for people trying to start and build a career in the sports sector. We provide applied, real world learning and educational experiences, content, courses that really help people understand the business of sport in a very practical, real life way. So all of our educational content is delivered by experts from across the world of sport, people from football clubs, from teams, leagues, federations, agencies, brands, the people that are really working in the industry at the moment. So that means that all our learning really helps improve employability. So for those that participate, there's a real understanding of how knowledge and skills they might have developed from a university course or from other more academic learning, about how that can be applied to the industry. I think there's, like a lot of industries, there's quite a big disconnect between what you learn in the classroom and what actually happens in the real world. Right? And really, you only start to properly understand sports business when you're working in the sports business, right? Because it just doesn't follow all the normal rules that you might read about in a textbook. Right. It also changes very, very quickly. And, a lot of areas that we provide more, I suppose, not executive level, but a little bit more advanced learning for people who've been in the sector for a little bit longer, or those that might want to specialize. We look at things like sustainability in sport, private equity investment in sport, governance of women's sport, and we're planning a course for later this year about Web 3.0 and crypto, NFTs, blockchain, and those sorts of things. Now, no one had even heard of an NFT 2 years ago. I mean, no one had even heard of a DAO a year ago, and suddenly these things are, they're changing the world of sport, and the industry is very, very dynamic, and it changes very, very quickly. So we're able to build pretty quickly learning experiences and courses that provide required information and insight on topics that individuals might not have learned about at university, or they might not know anything about if you're in the sports industry. So we're able to react quite quickly. We're able to provide learning on really topical, interesting, dynamic issues and areas of the industry. Right. And ultimately, we're about helping people connect with the industry, helping people connect with our speakers, with their peers, and our sort of overarching mission is to really accelerate people's careers. And that's whether you're a student trying to break into the industry, whether you're a career starter that might want to specialize in a particular part of sport, or whether you're somebody that's been in the sports industry for 10, 15, 20 years, but wants to find out more about sustainability. And then you can come and participate in some of our programming and really start to get your teeth into that particular issue. So, we see ourselves as a sort of modern, contemporary learning and education provider for an industry that's evolving really, really quickly.
Right. And to go a little bit deeper, though, obviously, you're the commercial director, and just talk a little about, some of your responsibilities, some of the, tasks that you're having and I guess in a sense, in a daily basis.
It's pretty broad. So I'm the commercial director. I mean, the business is owned by a specialist venture capital firm that has funded the organization. We're 2 or 3 years old, so we're not startup, but we're still, early stage, and we're still growing. So my role is pretty broad, really. Everything from designing and developing the particular courses and the content. It's engaging our speakers and the faculty. It's driving the sales and marketing function. It's also looking at it from a business point of view, and are we revenue generating? Are we efficient? Are we a business that is investable? Right. It's also looking at fundraising. How are we going to get more fundraising into the business so that we can grow and evolve at the rate that we want? Yep. but also, like all small businesses, it's all the big fun stuff, but it's also having to do some of the nitty gritty, which is, okay, I've got to write some of the LinkedIn posts or put something out on social media or make sure that we've booked a room for this meeting. And so it's pretty broad,
right?
And which means every day is different. Most of it is good fun. Some of it is not that great, but that's every job that you come into, right? There's always bits you'll know. A lot of it is great. There's bits that you think, oh, not particularly looking forward to, going through the P&L and doing all the numbers and all the rest of it. But it's a fascinating business to be part of, and it's fascinating to be still involved in sport, which ultimately is the industry I know and the industry that I love being part of. But to come at it from a slightly different angle, from that education angle. And I sort of think, we talked about how my career started, but there was no real education or learning. I mean, you just learn as you went along. And you sort of had to, you just had to try and learn. So I would love to have had a facility like InSport Education when I and my peers were starting, where you could actually learn in a slightly more formalized way, but in a very practical way, tips and information and insights that you could go, right, okay, I'll take that information and I can use that tomorrow when I'm doing this particular task or on this particular project. So it's great to be part of the industry and doing something in a slightly different area.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think it's important here what you talked about as well. There's a lot of fun stuff in the industry, but there's also things that has to be done that is not as fun. But it's all part of the journey, right? And I think people sometimes they always very easily it's very easy to kind of see like, oh yeah, I'm gonna work in the sport industry, so I'm gonna stand next to Cristiano Ronaldo on the field pretty much, and kind of like they see the glamour and the all the good stuff, right? And there's a lot of good stuff there. There's a lot of ways to be involved, but you have to understand as well that in order to do that, and whatever role you have, there's still like we all have to contribute. We're never too big for any task, and so it's part of being part of a small industry in a sense as well, and building your way up. So
I think it's an important point, right? You have to show the humility and the enthusiasm to get involved and to work hard. There's some great opportunities and there's some great experiences and amazing things that you get to do working in sport. But you've also got to do the hard yards. I mean, people don't post on their Instagram feed, when they're stuck in the office at 2:00 in the morning stuffing press packs, but they certainly put their photos up when they're at the Monaco Grand Prix, having a beer and watching the Formula One. So it looks like it's this amazing, super glamorous job that you just hang out with footballers and fly around on private jets, and hang out in hospitality. And there is a little bit of that, and that's why people are excited about it.
This much,
tiny bit, and there's a lot of hard work that goes into that. But there's a big engine behind the world of sport. It's a massive industry, and it's growing. Still growing at a huge rate. I mean, in spite of the pandemic, sport has shown itself to be very, very resilient industry. And growing worldwide at a pretty impressive rate, and looks set to do that, which throws out a lot of opportunity from an employment point of view and all sorts of different aspects of the industry that provide opportunity for employment. So it's a very exciting place to be.
So let's talk a little about pandemic, a little bit what happened, and a little bit about obviously you guys kind of working in the sports education field, to at least to a certain degree. And how would you say, I guess, the demands of the industry has changed, and particularly, after the pandemic? I mean, also we're going to talk a little bit about some key trends and topics that you see as, really key moving forward. But what are some of the, I guess, the demands that have been changing after the pandemic that you see?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think I can answer that question in sort of two ways, right? The industry underwent this huge sort of disruption, um, which was brought around by the pandemic, and by and large, sport has got back to pretty much where it was before that. We have crowds, we have matches, we have events, we've got women's Euros, we've got tennis, Tour de France, all that stuff is back.
Yeah,
but it certainly changed a number of things around the industry. I think it highlighted the importance of digital and social media and creativity and content, being able to work with assets in a more creative way. I think it showed the appetite for fans to be a bit closer and more involved with teams. And, you know, suddenly football clubs had no fans in their stadia. They had no way of engaging with fans really, and they weren't playing any matches. So for a lot of brands and a lot of clubs, really the only way they could do that was through digital and social. And suddenly teams were opening up a little bit, players were sharing a bit more content. You know, people were much more, there seemed to be much more access to a sort of world that had been very much shut off pre-pandemic. Right. And people love that. People love seeing Jurgen Klopp dancing after winning the Premier League. People love seeing, you know, how athletes staying fit at home in the pandemic, because it was a glimpse behind the curtain. It was like, we're getting to see a little bit of this private world that we haven't seen before. And I think that's a really interesting one that, you know, that will change and will stay. And there's a lot of use that can be made out of that. Right, so that I think is a key one from our point of view, from an InSport Education point of view. We were in a situation where, you know, we'd started in 2019 as a business that delivered in-person experiences. That changed pretty significantly. Right. So it was a big shift to online, and the pandemic has definitely changed attitudes to learning. You know, there's a greater acceptance of online learning. There's a greater appetite for more applied learning. You know, how do I find a way into the industry quicker? Maybe university isn't right for me because it's quite a long time, it's quite expensive, it might not get me the job I want at the end, I'll come out with student debt. Are there other routes into the industry? So, you know, there's a few things around the pandemic that had actually been relatively positive for us in terms of our approach to learning and our business model. Right. But yeah, there's still, you know, big changes that came about from the pandemic.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, like, if you wanted to, then, I mean, like, you talked about, like, you know, some of the, I guess, trends and topics that have come up. And if you wanted to, like, I guess, the way, you know, you guys been working, the way, you know, you've been seeing and being part of this now, like, what are some, you know, topics that you see as a staple now for any, you know, future sport professional out there, you know, taking that next step? What are some of the things that they should kind of keep an eye out for?
There's the industry, as I said, has evolved so quickly and is you know, is a complicated business, right? I mean, I sort of think if you look at a lot of industries, a lot of businesses, they pretty much have one single thing that they do. If you run a shoe factory, you've just got to make shoes as quickly, as efficiently as you can. If you run a football club, you've got a media business, you've got an operations business, you've got a retail business, you've got a venue. You know, it's massively complex, right? So there's all sorts of things swirling around. But no, I think some of these topics we've touched a bit on already. I think sustainability in sport, you know, people are already asking questions about, you know, how sustainable is it in terms of buildings and either financial sustainability of sport, and what does that financial model look like? So I think an understanding of the finances of sport is pretty key. The world of you know, cryptos, NFTs, decentralized organizations, you know, that is going to grow, and that is, again, is changing how people are looking at sport. Content we've touched upon. I mean, digital and social media, you know, I remember early days, you know, you made a Facebook page, that was it, that was your digital strategy. Now your digital strategy is the first thing that that you have to lead with if you're working with organizations. So I mean, an understanding and a capability in digital and social media is not a nice to have. That's a fundamental.
Right.
You have to have that.
Yeah.
And I also think an understanding of the relationship between fans and sport, that has changed significantly in recent times. I think the pandemic almost strengthened that relationship. But how do you build meaningful, lasting relationships with fans through sport? Not just for 90 minutes when they're watching a game of football and then they disappear off, but how do you build communities? How do you make people feel involved? And that ability to really make it a much longer, more worthwhile relationship from both sides, I think is a really fascinating part of where this is going. People want to be, they want to be part of communities. They want to be part of organizations where there are other opportunities, not just about the sport or the match, but there's other things that they can be part of. And I think that's a really exciting aspect of it as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like there's always things coming up. I mean, like you never know what comes tomorrow in a sense, in this industry. There's always something new changing the game, and that's part of like a very fast growing and very innovative industry. A lot of things evolves, and I wanted to sort of like wrap up here as we're about to run out of time, and if you could sort of like, I guess in a sense, just very shortly here, kind of highlight some key tips that you have for students looking to get their foot in the door. We talked a lot about different kind of things here, and I think there's some valuable key points that they should highlight. But if there's some final tips that you would like to provide them here at the end.
No, I think you've just got to explore every opportunity. You have to be prepared to put yourself out there. You've got to be prepared for a bit of rejection, but you've got to really build your network. I would say get involved with sporting, get on LinkedIn, get into digital and social media. I would also say come and look at InSport and some of the content that we have, but look out, there's lots of areas where you can build your skills, your capability, stay on top of what's happening in the industry. There's a huge amount of information that comes out on a daily basis, some fantastic newsletters, that you get delivered to your inbox every day that can tell you everything that's happening in the sports industry. So you need to be up to date in what's happening. And I think you've just got to be persistent. You've got to be persistent. You've got to be enthusiastic. You've got to be prepared to work hard and use all the opportunities you have at your disposal. Use the contacts, use the relationships. If you meet somebody, follow up, because you just never know when that opportunity is coming. And yeah, you've got to pursue lots of different angles. There's no point saying I'm going to apply for one job at this agency or one job at that football club. You can't, and you've got to be prepared to compromise a bit. It might be, well, actually, I'm going to go and work for this organization to build up my experience of it, and then I can go and do what I really want to do, and I can go and work in football, I can go and work in media, or I can go and work in community, or whatever it might be. But look at the breadth of the sports industry, the vast array of opportunities that exist within it, internationally and domestically, in all sorts of different areas. Find a way in, and then when you're in, then you can start to move where you want to go and look at different things. But all that time you're building up experience, which, as we all know, that's the hardest thing to do. But it's about being persistent and just using every potential opportunity you have to build a relationship, improve your learning, understand the industry, and just keep at it. Be persistent would probably be the key thing.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a perfect way to wrap up, Dan. I would like to thank you so much for taking the time, for sharing your tips and insights with our community. And for those of you that stayed at all the way at the end, make sure to like the video, subscribe as well to get weekly tips from leaders like Dan, talking about their journey and tips in the industry, trends, all this cool stuff that is happening, another way for you to keep growing your knowledge. And, as always, make sure to sign up at Sporting Global if you haven't already. It's free. You can find jobs, connect with the right kind of people, find great courses and programs that are suitable for you. So with that, Dan, thank you so much for taking the time. And as a final little thing, I have to teach you a little bit Norwegian. It's like a last challenge.
Okay, I'm up for it.
Awesome. So with every video we do, we always finish with "Vi snakkes," which means see you later in Norwegian. So that's what
Vi snakkes.
There you go. Great job.
Vi snakkes, everyone. Thanks very much, Ollie. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Dan.
And I look forward to watching the success of sporting over the forthcoming months and years. So thanks very much.
Awesome. Likewise, Dan. Likewise. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Bye-bye.